Welcome to TKQ&A, questions and answers about transitional kindergarten. I'm your host, Amy Moser, UPK coordinator for the Kern County Superintendent of Schools. Last time we were together, we had a lengthy conversation about behaviors. And today we have back in the studio with us Julie Kurtz, author, founder of the Center for Optimal Brain Integration, back to have another conversation with us about behaviors.
Here we go again, Amy.
Yes, welcome back to Bakersfield.
This time
Julie.
it's tier 1 relationships.
It is. So I'm going to let our guests or our viewers know that last time we were together, we really dove into what systems are in place for supporting TK behaviors, because as I mentioned, we get a lot of calls about behaviors in the TK classroom. And you gave us some direction and support around the pyramid model and the different tiers of the pyramid and how teachers and district leaders can support children using those strategies. And we said at the end, gosh, this is so big, we're going to have to come back and talk about it again. And so here we are.
Yes, I've been sleeping in the studio, so we are back here for our next one.
You're awake and ready here
ready.
in the studio. And we're going to today talk about tier 1.
Yes.
And in preparation for this, it's going to be a 2-part episode today because there is so much just in tier 1. So we're going to begin talking about that bottom tier, talking about nurturing and responsive relationships for children. So can you start us there in tier 1, talking a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, if you look at the pyramid or MTSS model, positive behavior support model, the bottom of the pyramid are the things that are good for all kids. And the most powerful way to prevent challenging behaviors is nurturing, responsive relationships. That's a big one. That includes the community we develop in the classroom, friendship skills and teaching those. It includes the adult taking care of themselves, and it includes the relationship that you build with individual children and the children in your classroom.
So thinking about that bottom tier and thinking about the building relationships, the beginning of the year is typically when that happens. Teachers are very focused on creating their classroom community when the children come in. But this is something that extends all year long, right? They have to be focused on this idea of that relationship and nurturing that relationship throughout the school year.
Absolutely. I mean, the beginning of the year when kids enter, they have a very immature nervous system. That means a nervous system that's underdeveloped, and they get worried and they get scared. And one of the things that promotes challenging behavior is when I have uncertainty, unpredictability, and I feel scared. So the way the teacher welcomes them, the sense of predictability, the building connection individually with each child is going to be critical in the beginning of the year. But you talked about doing it throughout the year, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yes. So thinking about these little children coming in with these immature nervous systems, they are very young. We always focus on the fact that they are 4 coming in very young, and many without social emotional skills, right? They haven't really learned or have had modeled for them how to communicate their feelings, how to handle stressful situations. This is all very new to them. And so we see a lot of behaviors, and we talked about these behaviors last time. We talked about the hitting and the biting, kicking, yelling, refusal to do things, maybe even throwing furniture. But we know that those behaviors are communicating something, right? So let's talk about that in terms of the relationship piece. That children's behaviors are communicating something.
Yes. In the first podcast, we learned about the brain, and we learned about the neurobiology of the brain and how it takes 25 years to develop the adult-type networks. In other words, the prefrontal cortex, the executive functioning skills that allow an individual to be able to say, what am I feeling right now? Wow. What size is my feeling? Wow. I have this big feeling. I need a strategy to regulate it so that I can get calm again, so that I can access my thinking brain to be able to think of a solution that isn't going to hurt others, myself, or things around me. So the crux of this whole conversation is in the relationship category of the pyramid model. The bottom is relationships. That means I, as an individual, when you have a challenging behavior, I need to try to figure out what the meaning of that behavior is.
Right. What is the trigger for that behavior? What happened before the behavior came? And you shared with me this graphic that we're going to share also with the listeners. It is this goldfish underwater, and you can see underwater. So I like think of this little child, like a cute little goldfish, right? And then there's a shark fin coming out of the water.
Goldfish is wearing the shark fin.
Correct. So talk about that graphic in terms of what you're saying about the communication of behavior and maybe what you see on that top layer.
So when we have our emotional buttons push and our emotions get really big or our stress levels get high or something happens that pushes an emotional button, we are flooded with emotions. When you have an immature nervous system, you don't know what to do with those feelings. And what it happens is I don't have words, I don't have regulation skills. And so what happens is I flip tables. I hit, I kick, I bite. I shut down in the corner. I run away. I run out of the classroom. And my behavior is communicating a story of what I'm going through. It's the teacher's job to look past the shark fin. In other words, when I'm mad at my husband, my shark fin comes out. When you're mad at your husband, your shark fin comes out. When we get frustrated at work, our shark fin comes out. We all have challenging behaviors. We temporarily put on a shark fin, which results in behaviors that hurts others, ourselves, or things around us. And so how do we get the goldfish back? One of the ways as teachers we can get better at this is to move away from punishing, blaming, shaming, criticizing, threatening, bribing. That's what we tend to default to when we see a behavior because we want to stop it right away. But what we're inviting people to think about is to be much more of an investigator, where we put on our investigator hat and say, what's the story behind the shark fin? And in this visual we're going to show you, there are 3 potential meanings behind behavior. On the shark fin visual, it'll show 4, but we're not going to talk about the 4th. I'll mention what it is today. So here, 4 reasons for challenging behavior. Think about an argument you got in with a loved one, and think about which was the meaning of your behavior. Number 1, behavior could be communicating. Challenging behavior could be communicating, I'm trying to gain someone or something. Number 2, I'm trying to avoid someone or something. Number 3, I just have a big emotion and I don't know what to do with it. Number 4, it might be a trauma trigger. Maybe the child's going through trauma or something toxic stress, and it is reminding them, something non-eventful, non-scary in the moment is reminding them of something scary in the past. Now, can I give 2 examples?
Sure.
Let's give 2 examples. I'm going to ask the listeners to guess what the meaning of the behavior is. Is it number 1, number 2, or number 3?
Okay.
Is it I'm trying to gain someone or something? Number 2, am I trying to avoid someone or something? Or number 3, am I trying to express an emotion?
Okay.
Jeremy is playing at your Child Development Center in the Sandbox. He is building an elaborate world, and he's so enthralled in it. But little Miss Susie comes over and takes his shovel and his bucket and runs away with it. All of a sudden, his emotional buttons are pushed. He is flooded with emotions. He doesn't know what to do with it. And boy, oh boy, we go from goldfish to shark fin.
Right.
And that shark fin chases her down, punches her in the face, pushes her, bites her. What is the meaning of the behavior? Is it number 1, he's trying to gain something or someone? Number 2, is he trying to avoid someone or something? Number 3, is he trying to express an emotion?
I think number 3.
Number
he's trying
3.
to express an emotion.
Now, could it be another one? What did she take from him?
Oh, his bucket and his shovel.
Is he trying to gain something back?
Yes.
His bucket and his shovel. So it can be number 1 and number 3. Now, does that mean we let him get away with it? That's not the end of it, right? We go and we comfort him. We calm him down. We calm everybody down. And once the thinking brain comes back online, which shuts down often under stress, we talked about that in podcast 1. Once the thinking brain comes back online, we can teach instead of punish.
That, I think, is the important piece to stop. I was thinking while you were saying that, so often it's about managing that behavior. So when the teacher gets the 2 of them together, it's telling the child that took it, like, you took this from him, this is not okay, you're going to sit or you're going to do this. And for him, it's like, you need to do this. Like, there's a lot of
lecturing
and direction given, but it's not the skill taught, where for Jeremy, he needs to learn that he can't punch, hit, bite,
Yes.
to get what he wants back or to manage his emotions. And the girl needs to learn that she can't just take things if she wants them.
Yes.
But that doesn't just innately come to them. That actually has to be taught and modeled. And we did talk about that last episode as well, the practicing of those skills. And then when they are feeling more regulated and able to hear the conversation, would you recommend having them go through that action? So maybe having Jeremy ask for his bucket or shovel, or have her say, I would like a turn with that. Would you have that practice?
I think this is a really good point. First of all, when do we teach? We never teach in the middle of an emotional emergency, because the part of our brain, in the first podcast, we talked about the top of the brain, the cortex that takes 25 years to develop, the adult type networks that allow us to have these skills of identifying my emotion, calming my emotion, and problem solving in a healthy way, takes 25 years to develop. That's why we teach, we don't punish. But in this particular situation, the first takeaway is we don't lecture in the middle of everybody being emotionally heated. We always connect first and calm. When calm, the thinking brain comes back and we can teach after the escalated event, or we can proactively teach before by practicing scenarios of things that we would do in the classroom, difficult situations that might happen and how we could handle them better.
So thinking about the building relationship piece and the practice that we're talking about, a tip for teachers in that beginning of the year and throughout the year is having opportunities where the children are practicing those scenarios with the teacher and building that trust and practicing and having feedback on both sides about what happened in this situation, what would you do, and let's act that out, and was that the right choice? There's so much, never mind the social emotional, but there's also so much language in that and vocabulary and language and literacy learning in that, that teachers could utilize that time in their circle to teach those. So,
and you're putting a pin in a future podcast of us talking about intentionally teaching social emotional skills, the ability to identify emotion, number 2, the ability to regulate an emotion, and number 3, problem solving in a healthy way.
yes.
Those are 3 things to teach, and we're putting a pin in that because that's what we're going to do later. But the problem is, in this episode, we're talking about relationships, and that means we move away from punishing, blaming, shaming, and criticizing to teaching, which builds healthy relationships. Kids feel safer when we teach them what to do instead of punish them. And our brain is wired for the negative, so we scan for what kids are doing wrong all the time, and we're correcting and directing them all day. Should we even talk about that?
Well, so that was going to be my next
Okay.
point. So for teachers, right? So as we're thinking about tips as they're listening to this, or even administrators to support their teachers, thinking about identifying the positives that they see, and just what you said, that oftentimes in group or in activities, you are scanning and your brain picks up like, oh, sit down. Nope, put that down. Nope, don't take that from her. And you're not paying attention to the other children who are doing well or doing what they're supposed to be doing. And they're not getting acknowledged because you are scanning, like you said, for the negative behaviors.
Do you know why our brain is wired to scan for everything that's wrong, what everybody's doing wrong, what our kids are doing wrong, and for the negative? Do you have any hypothesis?
I would say for protection, like self-preservation.
Yes, we are wired for survival. We are wired for protection. And because of that, our brains tend to see more of the negative. And so as a teacher, under that bottom tier, which is building nurturing, responsive relationships, we have to be really careful. The heart is good. The heart wants to teach, so we want to catch kids who are doing everything wrong. But then we're creating a culture where kids learn, you only see me when I'm doing something bad. I learned that I can get attention and connection when I'm doing something wrong. And in the first podcast, we talked about how the midbrain, the limbic brain, we are neurobiologically wired for connection and relationships. If we don't get them, we will flip tables to get them. And so the more as teachers we build a habit of catching kids doing really well, we wait, we don't say anything, and then a challenging behavior happens, and then we jump in and we put the fire out. However, we start to create a culture in our classroom where kids unconsciously say, wow, all these kids are getting a lot of connection. I'm not getting anything. My brain needs it, so I'm going to flip the table. I'm going to hit somebody because then she'll come running to me or he'll come running to me.
Yes. And also it sets something for the other children in the room to notice those same behaviors. It creates a culture of where you have every classroom has children who are little helpers to the teacher who will help you identify behaviors. If you missed it, they're going to tell you, like, you didn't see this, but this happened while you had your back turned. And then I feel like that affects the child's identity. Like they become the bad one in the class, right? And that could follow them from TK on. And not that the teachers are doing it intentionally.
No. And I'm going to build upon that. Every child has an invisible voice recorder inside of them, and they record what you say to them all day. And if we are correcting and directing all day, the inner narrative becomes, I'm bad, I'm stupid, I'm wrong, and they replay that throughout their lifetime. And the goal is to shift the narrative, because in typical preschool classrooms, the narrative generally is, because we scan for the negative, 3 times we correct and direct children for every time we give them a positive. And we want to flip the narrative to be catching them doing really well 5 times for every time we have to correct and direct or teach.
And that is going to take practice for teachers as well.
It's a muscle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's not easy because, again, your immediate response is to identify what is not going well in the classroom. So for teachers who are listening, we talked last episode about classroom expectations. So within this realm of the bottom tier, and think the relationships that you're building with children. So we talked about that. They're communicating a behavior. So let's look at that shark fin and look beyond it to see what is it that they're trying to communicate with us. We talked about catching the positive, but then there are the classroom expectations and rules for the classroom. I know we use the word expectations a lot, and many teachers have classroom rules. So can you talk a little bit about how those expectations and rules fit into this relationship?
Yeah, in an early childhood classroom, we could have 1,000 rules. If I asked you to make a list, you could come up with so many rules, but under those rules are generally, for an early childhood classroom, 3 expectations for how we behave. And in general, they fall under we are friendly, we are safe, we are respectful. I'm going to make those 3 up. Those are the general ones. If the listeners can think of any rule they have, I bet it falls under we are friendly, we are safe, we are respectful. Maybe we add healthy. So when children are taught the expectations, they feel safer. When we are in a classroom where we know our teacher is going to keep us safe, when we have to follow rules, but when we have expectations for how our clan, our community, our culture will work, we all feel safer. But in addition to that, we can catch kids doing positive. For example, I can say, Amy, you sneezed in your elbow. That was being very healthy. Wow, you put your dishes away. That was being so helpful. Oh, your friend was sad and you gave them a tissue. That was being so friendly. And see, now we're going back to the catching kids 5 times for positives.
Right.
We can catch them doing the expectations throughout the day really well. We can do things like have a compliment tree with leaves, and we can write down every time we see a child being friendly, safe, and respectful, and they can take the leaf off the tree at the end of the day and bring it home. So now we're creating a homeschool positive connection as well. We just have to make sure the kids who wear the shark fin a lot throughout the day do get positive leaves as well, because we don't want to use it as a punishment, like you didn't get any leaves today.
Right. And I think that's helpful because sometimes we see teachers using writing names on the board or stars on the board to say like, oh, you earned a star because you were being a kind friend, but then there are children whose names never have a star next to
That's
them.
right.
So trying to create an environment where you are looking for positive behavior and really making a effort to notice those children and see those children
Because every time you notice them, they're getting a dose of oxytocin, which is a positive chemical that buffers their stress. But what happens, there's two other things that happen. They get so excited that they want you to see them again. And they're like, teacher, I did it again. And it triples. It triples the amount of positive behaviors that you will see. And the other kids are going to see you give positive connection to them. And they're going to be like, teacher, I did it too. Teacher, I did it too.
Yes.
It is contagious.
Yes.
In the culture.
Yes. And that helps them to feel safe, which helps them to build a healthy and positive relationship.
And it helps them to build an inner narrative. I'm being friendly, I'm being safe, I'm being respectful, versus good job, which, what do you record in your voice recorder when you just say to a child, good job? I'm a good job.
They don't know for what.
Exactly.
They don't know for what.
Exactly.
Well, we have to pause here because we have to prepare for episode 2 because we're already done with part 1. So when we come back together, we are going to talk about regulation for the teacher in the classroom and what does that look like. So join us for part 2 with Julie Kurtz, author and founder of the Center for Optimal Brain Integration. We'll see you soon.